Hi writers, welcome back to Writers Workshop. Yesterday when we met for Writers Workshop, we talked about using strong verbs, not using weak verbs like said or went, instead replacing those words with stronger words that were more specific. So yesterday you watched a brain pop, and today we will continue revising. That means going back to the stories we've already written. Probably at this point you've written 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 narrative stories. So today, writers, we are going to revise those stories by rereading them and adding new details. A lot of times when we're writing our narrative stories, if we only write it once, we forget a lot of information. We have a lot of information in our brains about the stories, but people that read it, they don't know that information. So today we're actually going to go back to those stories, reread it, and see what we're missing, because a lot of information might be in our brain, but it's not on our paper. So we're going to see what we need to add to our stories to make them more specific, so our readers know what's happening in the story. I'll show you how to do it next. All right, so I am going to pick one of my stories that I want to work on to add more details by rereading. I have 3 stories written. One was Pie Coach Trevor, one was my master's graduation, and then I've written another one, which was inner tubing in Jamaican rivers on our honeymoon. So I'm going to revise this story, and I'm going to reread it and try to add new details. All right, during the summer on our honeymoon, Mr. Viller and I were going on an excursion to intertube down the Jamaican rivers. When we arrived, we got on a bus to travel to where we get into the inner tubes. Well, this bus wasn't like a normal bus. It was a bus with no doors or windows. So we were strapped in, and it was kind of scary. It felt like the ride at Disneyland Indiana Jones. So I could explain that to my readers because they don't know that. The bus had no windows or doors. Another thing we did was we drove on dirt roads. So it was a very bumpy, crazy ride. And this is very true. So now I told my reader a little bit more, that it was a little bit bumpy and crazy. And I could even add some lines to show movement about how bumpy it was. Okay, so then I added one thing to my first page. When we got off the bus, we lined up by the river to get onto our inner tubes. So I can think about this moment. I'll say this. They tied all of our tubes together so no one would get stuck or left behind. I don't remember exactly how many people were there, but I do know that there was about 15 to 20 people in this whole line, which was really a lot of people. So I'll tell that. There were about 15 to 20 people in our tube line, with one man leading us in the front. Okay, so I added a little bit more. We went down the river. A Jamaican man pulled us in the front. He had a paddle to help us go faster. I can kind of explain how it was. It was really, really fun, and we went through some fast parts of the river where we would get all wet and almost fall off our tube. It was kind of scary but exciting. I'll say that. So we went down fast water falls. We got very wet on some parts. Ooh, I could try to add some dialogue. The man in the front would yell, hold, there's my quotation marks, hold on tight. This is a bumpy ride. He would yell that. There we go. I added a little bit more to my big thing that happened, which was the actual tubing part. And then on the end, when we got to the end of the river, there was a rope swing from a tree. We got off our tubes, swam to the edge, then climbed up to the rope swing. Each of us went off and landed in the water. So this is true, and this is how it ended, but how can I end this in an interesting way? Remember, we never say the end. Instead, I could talk about how it's a time I'll never forget because it really was special. This was a special memory with Mr. Fisler that I will always remember. And I could even say, I hope one day we can do it again. Okay, this is page 4. All right, so now readers, I went back and I revised my story by rereading each page and adding new details. So writers, today I want you to go back to one of your stories. I have 3 stories. I want you to go back to one of your stories and I want you to reread them and see if you can add any new details that your reader doesn't know. Go ahead and get started, writers.